I used to be a dispatcher for a small ambulance station just outside a big city in the Midwest. It wasn't a huge place. We had a handful of rigs, a tight-knit team, and a daily rhythm that became second nature after a while. Most days were just a mix of routine pickups, emergencies, and the kind of controlled chaos that comes with the job. But every now and then, something would break that routine, something you don't forget. This one's never left me. It still creeps into my dreams, uninvited. We had this patient, Susan. That's not her real name, but it's what I'll call her. She was in her late 70s, fragile, soft-spoken, the kind of person you couldn't help but feel protective over. She had to go to dialysis 3 times a week, and our station had the contract to get her there and back. Rain, snow, whatever. Our crew was always there, picking her up from the little house she shared with her adult son, David. Now David, man, where do I start? He was probably in his late 40s, never had much to say, always polite, but kind of distant, cold even. There was something off about him, like a light that wasn't all the way on. You know how some people feel like they're standing behind a curtain and you can't quite see who they really are? That was David, but Susan seemed to rely on him, and he always coordinated her trips. It worked. For over a year, we saw Susan like clockwork. She became a regular part of our world. The crews knew her, cracked jokes with her, helped her with her walker, brought her blankets in the winter. I spoke to her on the phone more times than I can count. I knew the sound of her voice, her laugh, the way she'd say, "Thank you, sweetheart," at the end of every call. Then one week she wasn't feeling well, but she still wanted to go to dialysis. So we picked her up, like always. But while she was hooked up to the machine, she lost consciousness. Our crew rushed her to the hospital. At the time, we didn't think much of it. These things happened, especially with dialysis patients. When her next appointment came around, I called the hospital to see if she'd been discharged. They told me she was still there, but would likely be released the following day. Okay, no problem. We checked back in before the next trip. A couple of days later, I called again. This time they said, "Oh, she was discharged yesterday." That was weird, because we hadn't taken her home, and I knew for a fact that no one else was scheduled to transport her. Susan never missed an appointment, and she always called us. So I called David. He picked up and said, in that flat voice of his, "She's not feeling good. We might take her back to the hospital." I said, "Okay, just let us know if you need anything." And we canceled her trip for the day. We never got a call. Next appointment comes around. I called David. He says, "She's back in the hospital." Still, we hadn't transported her. It was off, but not completely unusual. Maybe he'd driven her. Maybe they used someone else. Same thing happens again. Next trip, she's still in the hospital. Still no call for transport, no updates, just silence. But then the next week, he stops answering. I call several times. Nothing. Voicemail. No return call. That was a red flag. We were still under contract to get Susan to her dialysis, unless told otherwise. So we had no choice. We sent a crew out to the house. They knock once. No answer. Knock again. Eventually, David opens the door, smoking a cigarette like nothing's wrong. The medic says, "Hey, we're here to pick up Susan for her treatment." David kind of pauses, blinks, and says, "Oh, I forgot to call. She's in the hospital." That was it. No detail. No apology. Just that same deadpan tone. The crew left, but when they radioed in, they sounded shaken. One of them said, "Dispatch, something's not right." The place felt weird. "Can you call the hospital and check if she's actually there?" So I did. And what the nurse said still gives me goosebumps. "We haven't seen Susan since we discharged her almost 2 weeks ago." 2 weeks. I felt my stomach drop. It was like the air got sucked out of the room. I told the crew to clear out, and I called the sheriff's department to request a welfare check. Then we waited. I couldn't focus on anything else that shift. My head was spinning with worst-case scenarios, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. The following morning, first call I get, "This is Sheriff from County returning your welfare check request." His voice was tense. He paused. And I swear, that pause said everything. He said when officers arrived at the house, David didn't want to let them in. He kept repeating that his mom wasn't feeling well. that she didn't want to be bothered. Eventually, after some back and forth, he let them in. They said the smell hit them first. The moment they stepped through the front door, it was like walking into a wall of rot, decay. They followed it to the living room, and that's where they found her. Susan was sitting upright on the couch, wrapped in blankets, eyes sunken, skin gray. She'd been dead for about 2 weeks. David had been dressing her, changing her clothes, sitting next to her and watching TV. He told the officers, "She likes her shows," like she was still there, like she was still alive. When I heard that, I felt sick. My hands were shaking. I had to step outside just to breathe. I kept replaying those calls in my head. David saying she wasn't feeling well. Me saying, "Let us know if you need anything." I'd been talking to a man who was living with his mother's corpse. And here's the part that still bothers me. There was no follow-up, no news reports, no arrest that I ever heard of, no closure, just silence, like it never happened. But it did, and I can't forget it. Sometimes I wonder how long he would have kept her there if we hadn't checked, how far his mind had gone, or maybe it hadn't gone at all. Maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. I still see her face in my head when I think about it, still hear the soft creak of that old house when the crew walked up, still feel the cold weight of dread sitting in my chest the moment I knew something was wrong. This job teaches you how to stay calm in emergencies. But nothing prepares you for the moment you realize someone you cared for, someone you knew, had been quietly rotting in a house less than 10 minutes away, while her son sat next to her like it was just another Tuesday. You think you know your town, you think you know your neighbors, but trust me, there are horrors happening behind closed doors that no one talks about. And I wish I didn't know that. I wish I had